smoke. So three items from this weekend and today from the PDN, none of them are going to get any kind of anything from me. I keep hoping and wishing that they would step up and have a bit more meat there, but such is life. So let's go ahead right on through and take a look at what the Post has to offer. The Guam Daily Post on Saturday did not run a local editorial. And yesterday, their editorial was Public Health releases guidelines for back to school. Again, I'm not going to read it to you. No need to do that. But the editorial correctly points out that the forms that implement policy issued a week ago are just now being issued 2 days before public school classes resume. Parents have not had a chance to see exactly how the policy will be implemented until now, over a weekend and without fanfare. I mean, the forms have been issued, but they didn't post copies of them online. It's funny, even the press didn't do it. Sometimes a public release of information is timed to practically bury it. That may not be the case here. The editorial bends over backwards to avoid criticizing those who worked on the guidelines, pointing out that they are responsible for public interface for the entire COVID effort. But they get this part wrong, very wrong. Issuing procedures and guidelines in public schools has routinely involved stakeholder consideration. It may be uncomfortable to hear from parents who don't want their children subjected to testing procedures, whether invasive, a dry swab up the nose, or marginally useful, the saliva samples. Does the school system have the numbers of qualified personnel to perform recurring sample testing of 26,000 students? Apparently so. How are those who are sick going to be readmitted? And how can they keep up with their studies? Or will remote learning at DOE be the same debacle as last year? Also, if you read the fine print, in this, 10% of the student population has to be tested every other week within 90 days of implementing their testing plan. That's the plan. Doesn't go into effect for 3 months, but classes started today. And they're not going to test but 10% every other week for the next, and they won't start for the next 3 months? Or like a little over 3 months. We're going to be into January before these people get their act together. Our current day general community reality is that over 10% of people who are getting tested for COVID are positive. Some days it's 13%. Less than a quarter of new case positives are the result of contact tracing. Vaccines are not available for students under 12 years of age, roughly grades pre-K to 6. There's a significant level of resistance to testing and vaccination in our community, and youngsters routinely carry bugs they pick up at school and daycare back home with them. That is the current day general community reality. The Post's editorial fails to identify the essential elements of our community problem, which are: 1, an executive decision was already made to resume classes today. 2, applicable public health guidelines are not being implemented today. 3, these guidelines have not been systematically presented for comment to parents and the public, like with a media blitz. 4, violating established norms such as lack of prior stakeholder meetings or hearings, the governor making the decision to reopen public schools, not the board or superintendent, and not implementing school health policies and procedures uniformly on day one simply erodes public trust. I have 2 children in school, both vaccinated. I expect the school system to notify me of their preventive health effort and procedures for excluding symptomatic students. Less clear is how to get them back into face-to-face learning after being excluded. Clearance by public health? That's a vague process at best, and that's been in effect. And it's vague. My younger boy was turned back from school. I had to go pick him up last week. He was excluded from school because he had sniffles. And it wasn't until this morning that they readmitted him. But he hadn't had a COVID test. He just didn't have the sniffles. I had a COVID test. My sniffles were from allergies. So mine was negative, and you heard it right actually on the air here last week on Thursday when my results came in. My example of my children, they're in a Catholic school. Most issues of communication and consent have already been covered, as have transitioned from in-person to online classes. Same with private schools. Contrast this with the effectiveness of our public schools. Not only do parents and public employees face less definite expectations and procedures, they also have a right to be heard, as does the general public whose government funds the system. And the charter schools, who knows? The Post editorial tries very hard not to fault public health. To me, the Post editors failed to see who is really at fault here. 1, with the board and superintendent of education for not evolving public education effectively when responding to evolving public health challenges, and directly administering the department. And 2, with the governor for strong-arming DOE's processes. Who's in charge here? It's very clear who's leading, but it doesn't hold up. It's not a complete system. It doesn't appear to be looking at it, it doesn't appear that it's going to be effective. And it's just not right. And the Post editorial didn't pick up on this, and they should have. They should have looked back one more level to find out just how this is going to work. Thank you, Jose. It is time. I'm going to take a little break here. It's time to take this first break of our show, and we'll come back again with more Zami Ikatni here on Tall Tales.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
You know all those amazing photos and videos saved on your camera roll capturing your love for Guam? We want to see it. Log on to visitguam.com/Instaguam to submit your best moments for a chance to win weekly prizes. The Guam Visitors Bureau will choose a weekly winner, so share your love for our island paradise now and win. Brought to you by GVB. Thank you for making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Yes, indeed, that's our number, 888-8255. Call up if you've got a comment or a question. to pose either to me or to the public. I looked down at my phone here, taking a look at the comments, and the comments were just exploding. What happened? It actually had gone back to the replay of this morning's show. So
yeah, we're having some more of those same difficulties, technical difficulties from this morning. I think it's from the weekend because we're in here trying to correct them. But if it goes off, we're going to go back on again. It's just one of those things. So
yeah, well, I lost the comments. I wanted to come back and take a look at some of the comments on that have been offered already, and it's really too bad because I see only Frank Perez here, and I do know that Jesse Lujan was on, and actually today's his birthday, so I'd like to wish him a happy birthday, Senator Jesse Lujan. And as many of you may know, I worked for him proudly for about 3 years. And so I just, it's when you spend virtuous time in the trenches trying to do what's right and push things in the right direction, it's always good. It's always good. Whether or not you've succeeded, at least you earned your money and you did the job that you were expected to do. But of course, like in the legislature, it takes 8 votes to advance something. So, and we did some good work there. So happy birthday, Jess. And so Frank Paris says, no, they're getting their acts ready. I kind of wish I knew what the context was of that. But Frank, you can call up and explain that to us. 888-8255. And so we've gone through 4 editorials so far. I've got one more chance for a pat on the back for getting it right. And I don't mean to dump on people, but it's a solemn responsibility for a daily newspaper and its editorial staff to think things through and to do what can be done to pull up the information that the public needs to get perspective. Not just an anecdotal story, but actual perspective and put things in context. And so, let's see, I've got, before I go on to my next part of Zami Ikatni, I've got Malcolm on the line, and I want to welcome you to Tall Tales.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you for calling.
Picky.
Well, I have high standards.
Well, I know, and I agree with you. There's so much to sort through, and I admire the fact that you put so much effort into getting this information together. That's why talk radio is one of the hardest things, I believe, and my hat's off to you and guys like Ray Gibson, because your brain just has to consume so much information constantly, and you know me by another name. We had a conversation last night.
Yes, absolutely. And
I just thought I'd surprise you.
Thank you for calling in. I know you by your voice. My ability to recognize voice prints is superior.
Well, yeah, we're all accustomed to doing things like that sometimes when we're working in that area of activity, I guess.
Yeah, oral.
Or the tonalities of music or these other expressions of audio type things. But anyway, I think that your opinions are pretty much right there, and some of the editorial problems, I think, are because some of the people that get these jobs are not schooled very much worldly in their ability to perceive what they're trying to report. It's just an opinion, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, I think that your observation may be closer to the truth than they will admit. Yeah.
Well, nobody likes to be criticized, and I think that another problem is that is a problem. People that used to be leaders that could actually get things done were able to deal with criticism, Of course, from the past 4 years, we had an individual leading the country that couldn't stand to be talked about or hear anything that was negative toward his attitude or personality or character or decisions. Getting back to the point that people have also become very critical. Each individual seems like their critique is more important than the person doing the job. Now, going back to, I read an article just as a reference when Reagan was in the office during the Beirut bombing of the Marine barracks.
Yes.
He didn't get a lot of criticism for being in charge during that time. But if we look back, and that's quite a few years ago, there, everybody, his brother and sister, didn't have a podcast or an outlet to have their opinions heard and expressed. There were news outlets, but they were pretty much staffed by professionals, and we got information from real professionals, not just everybody with an opinion. But now we have this siege of humanity that, everybody's got an opinion, and anybody trying to do the right thing can't do the right thing because somebody's going to shoot at them from one direction or another. I'll leave it there, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes. On the other hand, there are some folks who have been giving opinions for professionally for 20, 30, 40 years. I was just taking a look at, he's an old-time conservative. I only bring this up because he predates the Heritage Foundation. And if you've been a reader of the Washington Post, you know which way they're leaning. You know. At least you know. And George Will was a regular contributor to the Washington Post from the conservative standpoint. And I appreciated his perspective because he had a rudder. But as politics evolved in D.C., it wasn't that there was a rudder, it was a campaign. It was, we need to build a campaign, rebuild the party, the Republican Party in particular, anew. We needed to shift. We needed to basically transcend the wreckage after Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford. Not that they were all bad, but the party had lost some ground and came back with Reagan. And that wasn't all bad either. It wasn't bad. It was America progressing. And because that was the choice of the American people, to put them into power. And so George Will, the whole time, had a set of principles that he was championing. Where we are now is the result of that journey we've taken as a country. And so when you hear me talk, I'm generally trying to be grounded in some sort of principles. And when I listen to someone like Frenchie, I'm listening for his foundation. I'm listening for his logic. I'm listening to what he is placing forward as facts and what he's putting forward as argument, and separating all this out so that I can understand where he's coming from and accept or reject based on my own foundation and preference and understanding of the facts that may be almost always when I talk to people, whether I agree with them or not, I learn something from them, if only where they're coming from. I need to let you know, Jose, I can't see the screen that tells me about the incoming calls.
The F.
Yes, but it comes up as something, please log in.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, you're just going to have to give me the high sign.
Yeah.
Let's continue. Again, you can call in 888-8255 and join the party here on the radio. Today's editorial in the Guam Daily Post is entitled, Gov Guam Should Never Be Silent on Drug Epidemic. Now, this is an editorial I'd like to read because it is interesting. Let's see. I'm trying to get the right one up here. There. No, that's not it. What did I do with it? You know, okay, I'm going to have to click this, read this off my screen. I've been having myself a time. I'm not only my glasses, but actually, Jose may have a copy of it. Do you have a copy of it? Oh, thank you so much. You know, it's really nice not working solo. It really is. Thank you, Jose. Gov Guam should never be silent on drug epidemic. And that's today's editorial in the Guam Daily Post. Drugs are a scourge on our community. Addiction-related poverty, illness, and crimes wreak havoc across the islands, breaking up families and upending the lives of countless others. Elected leaders should take every opportunity to share what they're doing to keep dangerous substances such as methamphetamine off our island. Longtime advocates and frontline workers should be given every chance to outline funding shortfalls and policy gaps that make their jobs harder and make things easier for the peddlers of these poisons. But it's especially disappointing during this pandemic, as the stresses of limited job openings and expiring unemployment aid risk a spike in crime and drug use, that these platforms go unused. Last week, senators held a public hearing on a measure that would address a gap in testing policies that can be exploited by Gov Guam employees who use illegal drugs. The bill requires workers to submit to drug tests if they resign following an announced round of testing. Failure to do so would forfeit unemployment rights. These entitlements include one used by many classified Gov Guam employees over the years. Those who resign in, quote, good standing are allowed to return to their old jobs or even a comparable one at no less than their previous salary. These employees have up to 4 years from when they left to come back this way. According to Senator Tony Atta, who authored the legislation, this reemployment benefit has been used to avoid drug screening. In our tanked economy, government employment is a great privilege. Pandemic-proof paychecks should be used to feed families, not drug habits. Taxpayer-funded salaries should enrich communities, not underground kingpins. But strengthening drug testing policies of government employees will also identify more of our residents who can benefit from and likely afford addiction treatment. And that certainly is a good thing. Unfortunately, nobody from Gov Guam spoke about the bill apart from the lawmakers who attended the hearing. The hearing was a missed opportunity for leaders including Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, the police chief, and directors in charge of human resources and behavioral health to instill confidence that our local government is a drug-free workplace by sharing interdiction and treatment efforts. Likewise, Attorney General Levin Camacho or someone from his office could have given critical legal advice on how to enact the bill while complying with long-held case law that limits warrantless drug testing. But instead, we got silence from all of them. Though the Legislative Committee is working to get testimony submitted from at least the Department of Administration, we hope more stakeholders step up to give input as well. We also hope that during subsequent legislative hearings, more than just government leaders participate. Our island needs to hear from recovering addicts and their families, treatment providers and social workers too. Their stories will open lots of eyes to how bad things are for many of our residents and how much help and funding is needed for the people who are trying to do something about it. Who knows, maybe by giving more voices a platform to talk plainly about the drug epidemic, our leaders will be less inclined to ignore invitations to join the discussion. In the meantime, their apathy helps no one who's lost life or property, livelihood or dignity because of the grip drugs have on Guam. And I really wanted to read this editorial. And I've got some comments on it, but we'll take a break here first. And again, our telephone number is 888-8255. I welcome your call here on Tall Tales.
Contact Express Financial for all your financial needs. Express Financial is consumer lending at its very best. They also have a host of dealer service programs with quick approvals. There are 3 ways to apply. Over the phone at 637-9834. You may visit their office in person at 600 Harmon Loop Road across the street from Costules. Or you can also visit their webpage and apply at myexpressfinancial.com. In most cases, you'll get your money the same day.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
And welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie. And we're still in Zami Ikatni. We're talking about the Guam Daily Post editorial today. Gov Guam should never be silent on drug epidemic. I've been in this situation. Draft a bill, set up a public hearing, invite testimonies from people who know about the subject matter. And no one comments. Yeah. No one shows up. No one comments. Consideration of the political aspirations of the sponsor seem to outweigh the community's good. Or outweigh the government efficiency to implement drug-free workplace policy. Nope. Political aspirations of the sponsor, In this case, closing a known loophole. Nope. Consider the source. Who's going to get credit for closing that loophole? Sit on it. Certainly, someone knows how many former and current GovGuam employees have been processed for workplace injury and disability claims, formally disciplined, or policy problem. Do the government personnel and behavioral health agencies and Attorney General, in their silence, imply that this is not a problem that's worth addressing? Is that what they're really saying here? Or that politics is more important than to address known problems with drug-free workplace? And I disagree with something that the Post said. When the Post says, our island needs to hear from recovering addicts, etc. In the general public about the drug scourge, actually no. When there are bills, or when there's consideration of the laws generally by our legislators, we need testimony from those who know well what the impact is, because it's their job to study it, and they have something to say about how this all can be improved. The Post itself can amplify the voices of the people who have been victimized or have gone through the process, have witnessed how easy it is, how hard it is, how whatever. They are in a position to write the story, use anecdotes, generalize, and tell the story of the drug scourge on this island. It doesn't have to come out of the legislature. It has to come out of the media. As much as I like this article, at the very end, they take a wrong turn. And they point back to the government to be the one to summarize it for us. The government summarizes it for itself so that it tracks how well it's doing with drug-free workplace, how many injuries are happening on the job because people are abusing their bodies on GovGuam work time, what kinds of injuries, what kind of loss of equipment, what kind of downtime, what kinds of leave, how agencies become dysfunctional because the workers are having personal problems with abuse. And they don't need to tell us this, but they do have to address it. And this bill was a good example of an opportunity to do that. And they should be talking about it within themselves. But it seems that they don't want to give Senator Tony Atta any kind of credit by bringing that information forward. Information that was collected by classified employees. And of course, they are supervised by political employees, but, elected and appointed. And we understand all that. But are we going to improve around here, or are we just going to let it be the same? Is that what we have a government for? To be safe, to be career safe, to be not willing to take risks that may lose constituency in the next election? If so, you need to know this now before the campaigning starts, before they try to tell you otherwise, how much they care about you. I know lots of really good people in the government. I know lots of people who are in it for themselves. And so I don't mind saying that. I'm not going to point out who's who on the radio here. But these are not unknown to the people who see them day in and day out. And so that's kind of where we are in the process of our government. And so we get the government that we elect, and we get the government that we deserve, because that's how we process campaign information and vote with those patterns. Just consider how some of the campaigns over the past 50 years, if they had gone another way. But it's not to bemoan the result of the election. The election was, and I'll salute the result of the election. But did we get the best from what was available to us at the time? Well, it's just about 5 o'clock here on Tall Tales. It's time to break for Fox News at the top of the hour and to hear some stirring music to get us charged up for the next hour. I'll be back with more following this break at 5 o'clock here on Tall Tales.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
funding. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. Congress has a few days to avoid a partial government shutdown. Fox's Jared Halpern has more.
A vote tomorrow evening in the Senate is not expected to end a stalemate over government funding and the debt limit. Democrats will need at least 10 Republicans to overcome a filibuster of a House measure that extends government funding into early December and suspends the U.S. debt limit through next year. Republicans insist they will not help with the debt limit provision, but would go along with the funding bill that also provides aid to hurricane-hit states and the resettlement of Afghan refugees. Without a short-term spending bill, a partial government shutdown is triggered Thursday night. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has moved a vote on a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill to later in the week as Democratic leaders shore up support for the measure. Democrats are also pushing ahead on the massive $3.5 trillion social safety net and climate change bill. The White House says President Biden spoke with lawmakers over the weekend on the path ahead. With Democrats divided on how much to spend, moving the vote on the bipartisan bill from Monday to Thursday allows more time for negotiations on the broader bill. Plus, top military leaders will testify before congressional panels this week. Fox's Rachel Sutherland reports.
Lawmakers on the Senate and House Armed Services Committees will grill Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley, and Commander of U.S. Central Command General Frank McKenzie. Top of the agenda, the Biden administration's chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. This is the military leader's first public testimony since the collapse of the Afghan government and the end of the U.S. mission in the country. Democrats and Republicans have criticized the withdrawal, during which 13 U.S. service members died in a suicide bombing in Kabul. Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
America is listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Haitian migrants at the southern border.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says of an estimated 15,000 plus Haitian migrants, 10 to 12,000 have been released into the U.S., but they are being watched.
We impose conditions upon them, so we keep in touch with them and ensure their appearance in court.
Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott says that leaves his state on its own to stem the migration.
We are going to arrest and jail people who are coming across the border for trespassing.
Both men on Fox News Sunday. Governor Abbott says the president is ignoring a constitutional call to secure the border. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
And 2 women are among candidates for Japan's governing party leadership for the first time in 13 years, and what seems like a big step in the country's male-dominated politics. In Wednesday's race, they are challenging 2 men, Vaccinations Minister Taro Kano and ex-Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida, both top candidates. Japan ranked worst among advanced nations in a gender gap survey, and women comprise only about 10% of parliament. Plus, a historic election in Iceland.
For the first time in any North Atlantic nation, the people of Iceland have elected an all-female majority parliament, with women elected to 33 of the 63 seats. Sunday's ballot count also revealed that centrist parties made the biggest gains, with the center-right Independence Party taking the lion's share of the votes. In addition to mostly women taking the lead in governing the island nation of 350,000, this latest election resulted in the oldest and youngest lawmakers to ever take a seat. 72-year-old Tomas Tomasin, who owns a burger joint, and a 21-year-old law student, Lenya Rum Karim. She's the daughter of Kurdish immigrants and is a member of the anti-establishment Pirate Party. Karen McHugh, Fox News.
I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Dumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
You know all those amazing photos and videos saved on your camera roll capturing your love for Guam? We want to see it. Log on to visitguam.com/Instaguam to submit your best moments for a chance to win weekly prizes. The Guam Visitors Bureau will choose a weekly winner, so share your love for our island paradise now and win. Brought to you by GVB. Thank you for making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
And welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie this afternoon. And when he gets back from off island, I will gladly relinquish this seat and listen to him myself. But for now, I'm here, and I've got you as close as your telephone. 888-8255 is the number here in the studio. If there's something that you'd like to get off your chest or to toss into for consideration by everybody, call up and let me know. I know I have a standing invitation for Frenchie to call back and explain more about his perspective on geopolitics that affects us here on Guam more so than most Americans. And so he may call back. And also, we finished up with Zami Katni by not giving any awards.
Wow!
That's right. 5 editorials, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and not a one, in my estimation, doing the job that needs to be done.
Denied.
I wish I was giving them all gold stars. I really wish I could. I wish it was a competition for multiple gold stars, because they can, and it is their rightful role on this island to say what needs to be said. If they don't say it, well, they're going to hear about it from me. Anyway, since I'm here. That's how it is here on Tall Tales. Let's take a look at some of the comments. I'm not quite sure. I've got a number of people with me this afternoon, but the first group that was with me today, the first listeners, because of a discontinuity in the Facebook page, I don't see their names, and I'm sorry. I know that the first one up today was Jesse Lujan, and so That was good. And then I didn't look back down, and then it was gone, and now it's back. I've got Frank Perez with us this afternoon, Sandra Regis, Ken Brown, and Jimenez Hesa is there, and say Ted Pajago Jr., who says none of the government agencies that have a stake made any statement for or against the drug testing program. Just terrible. Right there in plain sight is the problem. No leadership or concern for a drug that wrecks families. They do have a drug court, too. That's right. I mean, we've stood up effort after effort to address drug abuse, and when there's a proposal to close a loophole in the administration of GovGuam employment practices, they all have something better to do. It just shows how hollow the commitment is. It really does. All they had to do was type out something and send it in. They didn't have to sit there. Just, one paragraph. And he also continues, we need to hear from the recovery treatment centers. You're correct, there are federal funds in support of this epidemic. Yeah, there are. And how are they being spent? That was another testimony that could be fleshed out. Well, this is what we're doing. Summarize it on down. But in fact, the Post could do this as well. PDN could do it. Because they've been taking these stories, they've been looking at budgets, they've been reporting on how many folks have been going through the courts, and they can't pull a story together just from research and a couple of phone calls. Colin Clark is here with us online, and Ken Leon Guerrero says, on your point about we get the government we elect. True, but we don't get much choices on who to elect. Incumbents like it that way. In fact, you know how Bob has the card, and the card is posing contenders on an issue, framing a discussion using the proponents on either side to illustrate the problem. And I'll be doing this as well. I'm just sort of getting my feet, my footing back after not being in this chair, except for in August, I hadn't been here for like about 14 months. And so I'm sort of getting used to being in the chair again and my show preparation and whatnot. I do have one that'll be a lot of fun. If we don't get any calls, I'm going to lay this on you. And that's going to be Michael Bavacqua versus Tall Tales. I've got this all written up. And that's coming up. But if you guys can knock me off this subject if you like. Also, I don't think Bob covered Bill 198 on the Dededo land transfer for Park and Ride. Okay, there was an editorial on the 23rd, and I covered this last week. So I took a look at this bill. There's a map attached to that bill, but did it come out in the editorial or in the story about it? No. We're talking about all the way from, they said it was across the street from American Grocery in Dededo. What they're talking about is the entire green space to the east of the main entrance into Dededo at the fire station and Santa Barbara Church. From there all the way to ERC. The entire green space between the residences and Marine Drive.
Is that where the skate park is also located?
No, that's on the other side. That's on the west side.
Oh, okay.
And that would go all the way down to Salisbury. Mm-hmm. And the corner of where the traffic light at the corner of where the old flea market was. No, the whole green space, the entire green space, and except for there's a block in the middle, it's discontinuous because there's a strip from the road to Marine Drive that contains a water well. So, this bill proposes to reduce the green space that is the buffer between Marine Drive and the residences of Dedido right there, unless it's built with absorbing pavers and water injection or ponding basin. There's a deep well there. It uses the water that falls on that property in particular. There's a typo in the bill, which is amazing. After the drafter of the bill, 4 other senators, 4 staffs, 2 processing committees, the subject committee plus the rules committee, 2 agencies involved, both Land Management and Regional Transit Authority, and the legal counsel all read it. Take a look at the bill. There's a period, not a comma, in the area of the first of the 2 lots. It looks like 5 square meters, 5 point, and then 3 decimal places, square meters, plus this other square meters. No, it's 5,000 square meters, plus the 7,000 square meters of the other parcel. So it's really 12,000.
That changes things a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's in the title, it's in the body. But when you look at the attached map, which is required for land bills, you see what they're talking about. And this was never pointed out by the newspaper. Never, ever. And I wonder if Regional Transit Authority anticipates using this real property to generate funds, as it's authorized to do, such as to erect or lease space to erect 1 or more electronic billboards along Marine Drive. It could be a forest of electronic billboards. There could be a whole line of them. A plain reading of the effort to acquire this land for expansion of service is a regional transit policy. That's what you get from a plain reading of the request for the land. According to the law that creates the Regional Transit Authority, such policy changes are subject to a prior public hearing requirement, and that's 12 GCA section 6105B2C. Statutory hearing requirement is not a legislative hearing, but a Regional Transit Authority hearing. So, if the legislature approves a land transfer and the federal government approves the use of the funds for this purpose, does that constitute approval of the policy? Or is the policy subject to the prior hearing process required by Guam law? Of course, you know the answer to that, because I'm just telling you. They haven't had a public hearing on this, their own public hearing on whether this is what the people of Guam want. It's not that they have to follow what the people of Guam want who show up to the hearing, but a major change of policy is supposed to be presented for public comment. Maybe there's a better place to put the park and ride. We're talking about Dedido Jigo. Is there some other public property in this area that could be used besides the green buffer along Marine Drive? You know, pave paradise and put up a parking lot, right? I mean, they wrote a song about that already. Are autonomous agency officials not subject to compliance with Guam law as long as they get the blessing from the legislature and the blessing from the feds? Never mind Guam law. As virtuous as this park and ride concept may be, are there not other procedural and practical and regulatory conditions that apply, such as fees charged for parking to support operational costs such as security? There's a 50-foot power utility easement that takes up about half of the property on the Marine Drive side. There's an adjacent waterworks deep well. The calculation of green space that was set aside for a village as large as Dedido to be used as green space for the people of Dedido to enjoy. The parking used by adjacent zoned businesses, traffic handling, the design for traffic to fill that lot with cars, vis-a-vis the adjacent commercial and residential properties. Monetizing this public property by leasing commercial concession space in competition with adjacent commercially zoned private properties. And the percentage of total land to be used for such commercial activity versus actual parking. These are all considerations that come up when you read Bill 198-36. And none of it, nothing, was reported by the media when they wrote the editorial last Thursday. None of it. Amazing. Amazing. There's another bill, because I've got in my show prep. Oh, do we have a call? Oh, okay. He's looking at it. There's an element that I've brought in, a couple of elements. Excavating the point, where a story is written about something, but actually the most important point of the story was buried towards the bottom of the story or missing. And also Bill Watch, just interesting bills. We've got a caller on the line. Let's go ahead and go to the caller. I don't have a name, but welcome to Tall Tales.
Well, you should recognize this voice by now.
I do, but many people may not. So
okay,
is this the other governor, Leon Guerrero?
I have been called that at times. That is true. And oddly enough, had I been the governor, a proper mass transit would have been one of my mandates, because this bill right here doesn't do anything to improve mass transit. I mean, besides all the deficiencies you pointed out.
Oh, yeah, it says nothing about it. It says in support of park and ride for a line that's going to go from Dedido to Manila.
Yeah, and we know from past experience that the problem we have with mass transit on this island, it's a political football, and it's used primarily as reward for good campaigning. And they don't put anybody in mass transit that has any understanding of mass transit. And I don't know Sal. I haven't had a chance to talk with him at all. But I haven't seen anything that has happened in the 3 years he's been there that indicates to me that he was any better than the previous manager, who told me he'd never ridden a bus in his life, yet somehow he qualified to be the leader of mass transit for the island of Guam.
Yes.
Which is a shame, because Guam is ideally suited to have one of the best mass transit systems in the United States, even better than Hawaii. But politicians don't want to do that.
We are ideally suited for a number of initiatives that could electric cars, even self-driving cars, because our scale is such and our patterns are such, and our reliance on transportation is such that the concepts could be proven here easily and cheaply.
They could, but it requires competence. It requires leaders, not harvesters, because the majority of the executive suite in government of Guam fall into the category of what I call harvesters. They're looking to see how much they can harvest out of the taxpayers. I mean, when you stop and think about it, almost every new agency director, one of the first things they do is they remodel their office and buy new furniture for their offices. They get a new agency car.
If you saw the cars and the offices they inherit, you'd do that too.
Well, let's put it this way. That's more in service to themselves than in service to the people who are paying the bill. Because why does a head of a government agency need a government car to drive to and from work? How did he get to and from work before he became head of an agency? And why do the taxpayers have to pay the gas bill of a V8 SUV for a guy that's going to be driving from Dedido to Upper Tumon and back, you know?
For a job where he has to push a pen.
Yeah. So you see, that's the problem we have. It's called the moral hazard. People who get into positions of power face a moral hazard. Do I use my time here to benefit the people of Guam, or do I use my time here to benefit myself? Now, if we look at Esther, what's her name, at National Guard, one of the first things she did when she got in at the National Guard was try to slide a 50% pay raise through the back door. How did that make the National Guard any better? How did that make the people of Guam any safer? You know, so we're looking at a class of executives that are in it for themselves more so than in service to the people of Guam. There's way too many examples, but going back to this bill about the new headquarters for mass transit, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
It only does if you're building an empire.
Boondoggle.
Yeah,
it's empire building, and it's a pork barrel, another pork barrel. It's kind of like the one that we're starting to see uncover with the Department of Public Works that Candid is covering right now about the possibility that an IDIQ contract worth millions of dollars got diverted outside of the process into the hands of a family member.
Well,
business as usual.
I'm not quite so pessimistic. I think that as we bring these matters to the public, and if people can understand them for what they are, then the campaigns coming up are going to be more difficult for some of these people for good reason. Not because we're campaigning against them, but because they're not showing themselves to be good stewards of the public welfare and deserving of trust. And I'm not out to erode that trust. I am out to shame them into straightening out before it comes time for a reckoning at the ballot box.
Well, the only way that's going to happen is the people of Guam have to stand up and flex their muscles, and it's easy to do. If everybody listening to the show right now got themselves and all their friends and family to call the Guam Election Commission and just verify your your registration status. Remember, over 9,000 names were deleted in January. So if everybody started calling up to verify that they are still registered to vote, or go online and check online to make sure you're registered to vote, and if you're not registered to vote, you can register online. You see, that would be one way that we as citizens could scare the politicians into doing the right things. Because if the word came out of GEC and spread through Adelup and through the legislature that the voter numbers are going up and people are checking, well, that just might scare politicians into doing the right thing. And this bill is not the right thing. It's the same thing as, transferring that waste, that the landfill site up in Dedido, the transfer station, to Guam EPA. That's going to cost taxpayers tens of millions of dollars to prepare the ground to be able to build a building on it.
Yeah, to remediate the subsoil after what was dumped there, not just by during the time that it was used as a transfer station, but before, because that actually was a site for military remediation. There was a what do they call that, pit, a deep pit, trench, and that was not cleaned up before they used it as a transfer station. Ken, I just noticed a comment from an online listener. Said that Selva Bauta has a master's degree, including a degree in transportation and traffic management, was a chief master sergeant in the U.S. Air Force in charge of mass transit in the military. And
well, that's good.
This is good because it would be good if we can get a better system than we have.
Yeah.
But it's taking, I'm getting gray hair over it. Waiting on an effective mass transit system. And so. Yeah, me too. In all fairness to Sel, I disclosed up front. Didn't know him, never met him, never talked to him, didn't know if he was qualified. All I said was that based on the actions I've seen over 3.5 years, I have no hope or no reason to believe that he is doing anything more or better than the previous manager who did nothing. And what better time to have done something than would have been during the pandemic, when we had those tens of millions of hundreds of millions of dollars of federal fund to improve our island for the benefit of the people. Just think of how many hours people spent waiting in cars to get food because there was no mass transit system that allowed them to more cost effectively go to the different distribution centers. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done, but going back to the point you were making earlier, politicians get away with what we as citizens allow them to get away with. And it's as simple as that. And that's why we have talk radio. So thank you very much for the call. Hopefully, though. Call again, Ken. Happy to hear from you. Bye. Okay. Let's take a break here, and we'll come back with more Tall Tales.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guam Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Contact Express Financial for all your financial needs. Express Financial is consumer lending at its very best. They also have a host of dealer service programs with quick approvals. There are 3 ways to apply. Over the phone at 637-9834. You may visit their office in person at 600 Harmon Loop Road across the street from Costules. Or you can also visit their webpage and apply at myexpressfinancial.com. In most cases, you'll get your money the same day.
Back to Tall Tales. It's 5:34 and some. We've got Martinez online. He wants to talk about mass transit. Good afternoon. Paps, how you doing?
Good afternoon, Gerald. This is Martinez.
Yeah.
I've been riding mass transit for over 21 years. I've ridden over 7,000 rides. For example, tomorrow I'm riding mass transit to take me. You know, as I say mass, I go back to the old days. To take me to the library, riding it again Wednesday to take me to the mall, riding it Thursday morning to take me to my dentist appointment and to get my medicine. Then the second time riding it Thursday afternoon to get my annual flu shot and my doctor's appointment. There's people that, like me, like one rider said, transit means everything to us. And people ask me, why did I call up the talk shows last year a lot to bring Ken Leon-Grow down when he ran for Senate? Because of what he says about mass transit. For example, one of your competitors last year, about a year and a half ago or so, he said, transit's got a, and people believe this guy. He talks so fancy. Transit's got a budget of $10 million, which is a lie, and he knows it's a lie. We don't even have a budget of 1/3 of that. Now, what he's saying about Selva Balto has gotten so much federal money past and in the future that you're going to see come into Guam. As far as the park, he was talking about two things. He was talking about the park and ride, then he was talking about the new office. You know, he was getting confused. As far as the park and ride, let me give you an example. About 18, 17 years ago, there was a guy from the South. At that time, the Agania hub was at Chamorro Village. I was down there all the time because I ride transit. That's how I get down there. This guy would park his car at Chamorro Village, and he'd work at Micronesia Mall, and he'd ride the express or the blue one, both that went to the mall. He did that for years. Think of how much gas he saved and how much maintenance. That's exactly what park and ride is. People can park in Delhi, don't get on what was the equivalent of Red Line 1. Maybe it's got a different name now. Go up to UOG, go up to GCC, whatever. And what Cell's doing is now people complain, well, you know, it only serves so many people. Well, now, with this, if people start riding it, like if they go to school or something, they can take that every day. And then Ken talking about the new office. Again, Cell has gotten so much federal money. That's the one where we had a hearing that was at 10 o'clock at night. That was actually the hearing on that. And Senator Pito's done a good job, better than a good job as our oversight chair for transit. And that's going to be, if you look at where GTA is in Tamuni, all the way down, that's, I believe it or not, that's DPW land. That is now by law has come over to us, and that's where the new office is going to be, the new maintenance. So the sales that are allowed, he's got tremendous amount of federal money. The last thing we need is people like Ken Leon-Grow shooting off his mouth, you know, while there's people like me and hundreds like me, that this is our life, transit. I just want to make that point, you know what I mean?
Well, I appreciate that because actually what we would like to see is a better mass transit. We've seen how private transit has carried thousands of tourists, but those buses are not. They're using the roads. They're using stops on the roads, not on private property, and even though the law required that all transit services be basically licensed by the old mass transit system. The law was changed and morphed and the powers taken away because they weren't used. And then and we ended up with a system that now Cell is building. And what Ken doesn't say as explicitly as I know that he wants to say is that he would like to see a better system that it's not just your experience, but it should be thousands of people's experience to be able to ride and park and ride and go to where they have to go because there is public transit. Instead of building wider roads, yes, maintain the roads, but instead of making wider roads, have transit so that there's less pressure to have to use cars or buy those little K cars to go up and down to get to where you have to go, because that's really the dynamic here is, are we building a car community, a car-centered transportation system, or are we building a people-centered transportation system? And so...
I agree with what you're saying, and Bob Klitzkie said something. You want to see a transit system like they have in Honolulu and other cities. This is a beginning. It's a big first step. And UOG, GCC is a good example where students from the north, if they can do this park and ride, they'll park in Dedidu and then they'll ride to UOG, GCC. That would be a beginning. Then that'll expand to other areas of Guam. So let's watch. This is a beginning. So I challenge everybody who's going to UOG or GCC and you live up north, park your car in Dedidu and and ride the bus to GCCOG like that guy did 18 years ago. He parked it at Jamal Village and he rode the bus to the mall to work and back. He did that. You know what I mean? So it's the beginning.
Yes, and so thank you very much for your perspective on this, Martinez. Appreciate your. Oh, there it is. I do appreciate your comments and the perspective that comes in from different people who do use the transit system and tell us how well they can rely on it, because those are not the usual stories. But we need to hear the stories from people who do use the system. And I've got another call online. Frenchie's on. He wants to talk about Bill 198 and the Lee Weber column. I did read that. I just didn't bring it in. Also, Afghanistan. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Hello, how are you?
Doing all right. It's Monday.
I don't know why you don't like those glasses. They fit you very well.
Well, thank you, but they're only reading glasses. And so I need to...
They make you look very scholarly.
Well, whatever works.
Yeah, it works.
Well, thank you.
It gives you a certain aura of believable, you know. So,
thank you.
The Bill 198, I had not heard much about it. I saw very briefly on their feed, but I didn't quite understand what it was all about, and I still don't quite understand most of it. I just know the area very well because I drive by there almost daily, and it is a very narrow piece of land, and it's not that big if you think about it. It's 1.2 hectare, 12,000 square meter. And then I don't really comprehend what they're trying to do, because you still have between the two extremes, you have two entrance and exits.
Yes.
Which are, one of them is quite dangerous because there is no light and people pull in without watching the traffic that comes at high speed. Actually, I think last month a lady got killed there, right across from the gas station. And I don't see how they're going to make it easy to use for the commuters without spending a huge amount of money and because you have on the other side of Marine Corps Drive, on the other side of that thing, you have areas that are always flooded as soon as it rains a little bit. It's a swamp back there.
Well, in fact, that's why I'd mentioned there's no mention of the traffic pattern that would be required, the realignment of the roads in order to use that as a parking lot. And then there's businesses across the street that are already using paved areas within that park. It was parking for a park, for a people park, and that they're using it for the businesses because there's not enough parking for the sizes of their businesses. And if when you use that street, it's a mix of residential and business, and it's slow. It's even if they were to widen it and resurface it, it still would not have the traffic pattern is not right.
Frankly, when I was listening to you and Martinez, I was kind of trying to figure out what the heck is going on, but it's not a very workable. It's so narrow, and I mean, on the positive side, it would not look like a jungle with do nothing Mayor Tavares making it look like it's part of the boonies out there.
It has been getting cleaned up. Yeah, but it has been getting cleaned up, but it's expensive and hard to cut that grass as thick as it is, and the trees are not tended, and you're right, it's a ponding basin, and there's a well there, because the water that falls in it does percolate down to the well.
Yeah, it's a the mayor is not very proactive. She just comes in for the photo ops and things. So we'll see. I think we need to watch it closely. something good could come out of it, but frankly, there is not that huge of a potential. And if the city cannot even do the maintenance of the greenery properly, you have handrails that are rotten to the core and falling over. You have playgrounds where it's so high you could lose an adult into it. I mean, it's just amazing. So, yeah, it's another one of those pies in the sky. I don't know what will come out of it. Let's pray that we need to stay positive on this and see what comes out of it.
I'm kind of surprised that they didn't propose the paved lot that is at the corner of Harmon Loop Road where it comes into Marine Drive, where the flea market used to be.
Used to be. Well, yeah, but see, that would make sense.
Yes, it would make sense. It's actually the traffic patterns already available.
It's a triangle, and you have different exits. You have basically 3 exits from that lot. That would make sense, and you could even have access to across the road with pedestrian crossing. That would make sense for a lot of things, and it's quite large.
It's quite large. Also, there's access from 3 directions, from Route 16 to going the back way up Machechi Road, and also Marine Drive in both directions.
Yeah, so you would have a minimum road entry and exit type things, which could actually make this whole corner a lot better, because when it's a rush hour, when you want to make a left turn going down Almond Road, I mean, it's like it used to be by the GRMC before they did 2 lanes to turn left. So, but we'll see. But the Lee Weber, I thought, was very good today. It was calling exactly on what you were complaining about the media not covering up that story. He's talking about that, and he's talking about something that Ken always brings up, which is people need to get involved if they want to move forward their ID. Even if Martinez doesn't like those ID, then you leave the electors decide what's good and what's bad. But in the meantime, he's basically saying the media does nothing. And Candid does some things, but he's also kind of shooting himself in the foot by being more of a revenge seeker, as he says, which is true. He went after Senator, what's the name of that senator that wants to fight corruption? The lady that was at the port.
Oh, Joanne Brown.
Joanne Brown. I think he has a beef with her. I don't know what it comes from, but it looks like it's something personal. And it's too bad, because when they do investigative work, they do a good job, and they can actually do something interesting. So, well,
that's why I try to encourage them to do what it is they are already equipped to do.
Yeah.
The media have a responsibility to step up and do this really good work. That's why I think it was on Friday I mentioned Steve Limtiaco. He's an excellent investigative reporter. Excellent. He's world class. He could work for any of the leading newspapers in the States and be right there shoulder to shoulder with them. Yeah. But he has one article every 6 or 8 weeks.
It's not, unfortunately, it's not something that's particular to Guam. I think it's worldwide in the Western world in general, where journalists used to be looking for news or inquiries and everything. Now they just present point of views, and they no longer do hard research. It's more of an exception than the rules. And so now the media have become kind of message.
A message
they relay
board.
Messages according to their board of directors, who have, most of them have been bought off by very large consortiums that do not have our own interest in their heart. So I think his article was Very good. You could probably do a whole story on that. That would be interesting. As far as Afghanistan, excuse me, I'm almost coughing there. As far as Afghanistan, there was a lot of development that's quite interesting. Is that the two allies of the United States that are geographically located close to Afghanistan, one is Qatar, and the other one is Pakistan, who has a common border with Afghanistan, basically stabbed the U.S. in the back. Now, Qatar has been the place where most of the Taliban have been taking refuge, or at least their leaders, taking refuge, and that includes the one that Obama exchanged for that deserter that we brought back, and we gave them 5 top-ranked Taliban. 2 of them are in the new government. But what really has happened is that besides the total foobar that has happened with the administration not doing their job, taking bad decisions, evacuating the military before all the civilians were out and all that, which, I'm not going to come back on that. But what happened is that those 2 allies of the United States, which we have backed militarily, financially, and politically for decades, as well as the largest military army in NATO after the United States, which is Turkey, actually have their own agenda, which they move forward. And now the Kabul airport is run by the Qataris. The Pakistani aviation has helped use those equipment which we abandoned in Afghanistan. And we have also Turkey, who was playing a very large part in the drug trafficking that was going on. Now, in 96 to 2001, until we ousted the Taliban had eradicated the culture of puppies and the opium trade.
That's right.
But now they figured out that it's worth about $1.5 billion with a B a year, and they are using it to finance some of their programs and their agendas. And unlike what the media portrays, like we have caravans of donkeys and camel bringing the drugs over the border, this is not actually what's happening. The way it was happening was that the Turkish army's plane were carrying the drugs from the Taliban into Turkey, where it's being processed and then distributed to Europe and the United States. And Turkey was very upset with the Obama administration because Obama tried to do a coup against the Turkish government and its leader, and which failed, and ended up with 15,000 military officers being detained, and some of them sent to life in prison and so forth. So Turkey is still playing a huge role. And then right now, they have been a little bit sidelined by Qatar, but we will see what is going on. Now, there are all kind of articles coming up, like China wants to build a pipeline.
Frenchie, excuse me for just a moment. Let me take a break here, and then we can come back to you after this break, because I want to hear the rest of this. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem.
Here at Guam Auto Spot, we have the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars, like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage, as low as $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Or this 2021 Buick Encore, as low as $237 per paycheck, 0 down for 72 months. Call 478-AUTO to schedule a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Yeah, we've got about another 4 or so minutes left here in Tall Tales this afternoon. We've got Frenchie on the line. We're talking about some of the geopolitics that affects us as Americans and also as residents of Guam. Frenchie, continue, please, your perspective.
There's been, since the fall of Afghanistan in August, on my birthday, actually, what has happened is that there's plenty of articles, both from the left and the right, which have been portraying it as a catastrophe, which it was, but they are portraying it for the wrong reason. One of the arguments that China is going to take over and build that pipeline from Iran to China on its western border, but I don't see it happening because building a pipeline every 15 miles, you need to have a heating area so that the oil doesn't freeze. Now, don't forget, Afghanistan is at a very high altitude with extremely harsh temperatures. And so building a pipeline is not something that's easy to do. And most of all, it's not something that's easy to maintain and make it work, because if you want the oil to come from Iran to China, it is a technology that the Iranians do not have and that the Chinese are not controlling. The only people that know how to do that outside of Canada and the United States is the Russians. And the Russians are not interested in doing this because they have their own gas and oil to sell, and they have been doing so. So this is kind of a pie in the sky. The other pie in the sky is rare earth. And we've been bombarded with stories that the Chinese are going to take those rare earth mines that are potentially existing. But we've been there for 20 years. And believe me, if the rare earth could be exploited, there would have been American companies that would have done so in the last 20 years, despite all the challenges. And it has not happened. So I don't see it happen anytime soon, especially in a context where the Taliban are not really a central government. It's a multitude of little regional governments. And basically right now, they still haven't agreed on who is going to be the president. And there is one reason for that, because those regional powers are based on tribes, and they all agree to be the boss in their own tribes. But in order to be the boss of the country, they have to get something in return. And the chief of the tribe has to come and say, "Oh, this is what I got you from the deal," and this is not happening right now. And
we were told this. We've been told this for 100 years. This has been the case. This is the bane of the Russians. It was a problem 20 years ago when we went in. We had to deal with tribes. Even the ones that were against the Taliban, they were all tribal based. And every time you talk about Afghanistan, you're talking about tribal areas, except for the city.
Like Iraq, once we took Saddam Hussein out, we had to rely on the tribes because Saddam Hussein was controlling the country by controlling the tribes. And we never learned that. Bush made a huge mistake by not understanding this. And so this is where we are now. And this is why we ended up with this AUKUS deal, which was poorly done. And right now they're trying to make it sound like it was a great deal, and I will explain later on why it is not and what is actually very dangerous for Guam.
Well, thank you very much, Frenchie, for the call again this afternoon, and I look forward to you calling again on a future show.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And have a nice evening.
Thank you. You too.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Osmond is back in Las Vegas, this time at Harrah's showroom for his first ever solo residency.
A lot of fun. It's completely different than the Donnie and Marie show because this show I set out to do the entire 6-decade career in 90 minutes.
Where in your story does it start? How much does it take us through?
I thought about that. How do I start and tell the story of 6 decades in 90 minutes? So I do it in 10 minutes. I do this rap, and it's very Hamilton-ish kind of a thing where everything is set to a rhyme.
In one segment, Osmond takes requests.
Any song I've ever recorded on any album.
Donnie also adds the new tunes of his 65th album, Start Again.
It's a story of my life and the experiences that I've gone through.
Start Again refers to how Osmond has reinvented himself in his career, which he's found is key to longevity in this business.
It's all about reinvention. If you want a long career, you can't rest on your laurels.
Ashley Dvorkin, Fox News.
This is House Call for Health. Adult obesity rates continue to rise. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recently releasing a report showing 16 states with adult obesity prevalence of at least 35%. It was just 9 states back in 2018. New states to the list this year include Delaware, Iowa, Ohio, and Texas. The results come from an ongoing behavioral risk factor surveillance system phone survey. Obesity is a chronic disease and increases the risk for severe illnesses, notably type 2 diabetes, heart disease, some cancers, and it can also be linked to declining mental health. The study also finds obesity declines among those with higher education. The Midwest and the South had the highest prevalence, followed by the West and Northeast. The lowest self-reported rate was by adults ages 18 to 24, the highest among ages 45 to 54. The CDC says to change the course of obesity will take a sustained, comprehensive effort from all parts of society. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. Comedian Norm Macdonald died recently after a private, nearly decade-long battle with cancer. Macdonald was known for his deadpan, dry delivery and wry wit. But back in the 1990s, viewers best knew Macdonald for his imitation of former Senate Majority Leader and 1996 GOP presidential nominee Bob Dole.
Bob Dole, not male, not female, not even human.